Police are investigating a terrible crime that has shocked the entire community. Local authorities are investigating the scene. We're here tonight to try and get some answers.
3 days after preaching about what he called the most dangerous truth in America, Pastor Elijah Ward disappeared. His truck was found empty on a dirt road in Effingham County. His sermon? Erased from every platform. His congregation silenced by anonymous. The FBI said there was no evidence, but the people who knew him, they knew something else. What did he say that Sunday morning that made him vanish? Savannah, Georgia, a city steeped in history, moss-draped oaks, and faith. The First Baptist Church has stood on Bull Street for over 150 years. It's a place where generations have been baptized, married, and mourned. And for the last 12 years, Pastor Elijah Ward had been its steady hand. He wasn't flashy. He didn't preach fire and brimstone. He was warm, thoughtful, grounded. He baptized babies on Sunday mornings. He coached Little League on Thursday afternoons. He volunteered at the community food bank every Saturday. His sermons were about grace, humility, and service to others. People trusted him, loved him. He was the kind of man you'd invite to your dinner table, the kind who remembered your mother's name, your kid's birthday, your struggles, ordinary in the best way, until the morning of March 10th, 2024, when he said something that would change everything. But to understand what happened that Sunday, you have to understand who Elijah Ward was before that day. His wife, Margaret, said he was a man of routine. Coffee at 5:30 a.m., prayer at 6, breakfast with their 2 daughters before school. He read the newspaper cover to cover. He mowed the lawn every Saturday, rain or shine. He never missed a wedding anniversary, never raised his voice in anger, and he never, ever talked about politics, conspiracies, or anything that would divide his congregation. That was Elijah, predictable, dependable, safe. But 2 weeks before that Sunday, something shifted. Margaret noticed it. He started staying late at the church office. He stopped sleeping through the night. She'd find him at 2 a.m, sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open, staring at the screen. When she asked what he was working on, he'd smile and say, "Just sermon prep, honey." But his hands were and his eyes. Margaret Ward had been married to Elijah for 17 years. She knew her husband better than anyone, and she knew something was wrong. It started with the emails, late-night messages from addresses. Subject lines like, "You need to see this," and "Please read carefully." Elijah would delete them immediately, but not before she caught a glimpse of attachments, PDF files, with names like Internal Memo 2023 and Confidential Report. When she asked about them, her forehead, and say, "It's nothing, Maggie, just some concerned parishioners." But Margaret didn't believe him, because Elijah had also started locking his office at the church, something he'd never done in 12 years. He'd cancel lunch plans, skip family dinners, and when he did come home, he'd sit in the driveway for 20 minutes, staring at nothing. Their daughters, Emma and Grace, noticed too. "Dad's acting weird," Emma said one night. She was right. Deacon Robert Hayes noticed it during Wednesday Bible study. Elijah seemed distracted, distant. He kept checking his phone. At one point, he excused himself and took a call outside. Robert followed him to the parking lot and overheard fragments of the conversation. "I understand the risk," Elijah said into the phone, "but people deserve to know the truth." When Robert asked who he was talking to, Elijah just smiled and said, "An old friend," but his hands were still shaking. The week before the sermon, Elijah met with someone at a coffee shop on Broughton Street, a woman in her 50s, well-dressed, nervous. She handed him a manila envelope. Elijah opened it, scanned the contents, and went pale. "Are you sure about this?" he asked her. She nodded. "I can't stay silent anymore," she said. "Neither can you." Elijah took the envelope and left. The woman paid for both coffees, walked to her car, and drove away. No one saw her again. That envelope? Elijah kept it in his office, locked in a desk drawer. Margaret never saw what was inside, but she remembered the night he brought it home. He sat on their bed, holding it like it weighed 100 pounds. "What if I'm wrong, Maggie? What if I ruin everything?" She took his. "You've never been wrong about doing the right thing," she said. But he didn't sleep that night. Sunday, March 10th. The morning started like Margaret made pancakes. Emma and Grace argued over them. Elijah sat at the kitchen table, staring at his notes. But this time, the notes weren't about forgiveness or redemption. They were about something else, something that had kept him awake for 2 straight weeks. He'd rehearsed the sermon a dozen times. He knew what he was going to say. He knew what it would cost him. But he also knew he couldn't stay silent. At 9:30 a.m., the church doors opened. The pews filled quickly. First Baptist was known for its live streams, and that Sunday was no different. Over 4,000 people tuned in online. Families, college students, elderly members who couldn't make it in person. Everyone expected the usual Elijah, comforting, predictable, safe. But that's not what they... Elijah stepped up to the pulpit at 10 a.m. sharp. He adjusted the microphone, cleared his throat, and for a moment he just stood there, looking out at the congregation. Margaret sat in the front row with the girls. She could see it in his eyes, fear, resolve, love. Then he began. "Good morning, family," he said. "Today I need to talk to you about something difficult, something I wish I didn't have to say. But as your pastor, as your brother in Christ, I have a responsibility to speak the truth, even when that truth is hard to hear." The room went quiet. Elijah pulled out a piece of paper from his Bible. "2 weeks ago I was contacted by someone I trust, someone who works, or worked, in a position of significant influence. They sent me documents, reports, emails, evidence of something that I believe every person in this country should know about." He paused. "There is a coordinated effort involving powerful corporations, government agencies, and yes, even some faith leaders, to implement what they call a population management strategy. The goal, according to these documents, is to reduce global population growth by any means necessary, quietly, gradually, without public consent." The congregation shifted in their seats. Some leaned forward, others exchanged glances. Elijah continued, "I know how this sounds. I know some of you are thinking, 'Pastor, this sounds like a conspiracy theory.' And I understand that. But I've spent 2 weeks verifying this information. I've spoken to experts. I've prayed over it. And I believe it's real." He held up the paper. "These documents mention funding streams, strategic partnerships, and even incentive programs designed to encourage certain policies in hospitals, schools, and public health systems. And the most troubling part? The people behind this don't. They see it as necessary, as compassionate, as a way to save the planet." The live stream chat exploded. Thousands of comments flooded in, some supportive, many skeptical, a few angry. Elijah kept talking. "I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm here to tell you what I've learned, and I'm here to ask you to think critically, to ask questions, and to demand transparency from the institutions you trust." He took a breath. "Because if we don't speak up now, we may not get another chance." And then something strange happened. The live stream cut out. Not buffering, not frozen, just gone. Black screen. "Technical difficulties," the automated message said. But in the church, Elijah kept preaching. For another 15 minutes, he laid out names, organizations, connections. He quoted from the documents he'd been sent. He urged his congregation to research, to pray, to protect their families. And then he ended with a prayer. A simple, heartfelt prayer for truth, courage, and protection. When the service ended, people didn't know what to do. Some hugged him. Some walked out in silence. A few approached Margaret and said, "Is he okay?" She didn't know how to answer, because 3 hours later, the video was gone, scrubbed from YouTube, Facebook, and the church's website. The channel received a strike, then a suspension, then nothing. By Monday morning, it was as if the sermon had never happened. Monday, March 11th. Elijah woke up to 47 missed calls. Most were from members of the congregation, some supportive, many concerned, a few angry. But there were 3 calls that stood out. Unknown numbers, no voicemails, just silence. Margaret urged him to stay home. "Let things cool down," she said. but Elijah insisted on going to the church. I need to be there for people who have questions. So he went, and when he arrived, he found Deacon Robert waiting in the parking lot. Elijah, we need to talk, Robert said. They went inside. Robert closed the door to Elijah. I got a call this morning, Robert said, from someone claiming to represent the church's insurance provider. They asked me if you'd been acting erratically, if you'd shown signs of mental distress. Elijah frowned. What did you? I told them the truth, that you're one of the most stable people I know. But Elijah, they knew about the sermon before it was taken. Exact quote. Elijah went. Then he opened his desk drawer. I need you to hold on to this, he said, handing it to Robert. If anything happens to me, I need you to make sure this gets to someone who can do something with it. Robert stared at the envelope. Elijah, you're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. We all should be. That afternoon, Elijah returned home early. He told Margaret to pack a bag for the girls. Why? She asked. Just in case, he said. She didn't argue. That night, at 11:15 p.m., someone knocked on their front door. Elijah looked through the peephole. 2 men in suits, no badges visible, no marked cars. He didn't open the door. Can I help you? He called through the door. Mr. Ward, we're with the FBI. What? We'd like to ask you a few questions about a matter of national security. Elijah asked to see identification through the door. They held up badges. They looked real. But something felt wrong. I'd be happy to speak with you, Elijah, but I'd like to do it at the local FBI field office with my attorney present. The men exchanged glances. That won't be necessary, Mr. Ward. We just have a few quick questions. Then you can ask them tomorrow. At the field office, silence, then footsteps. The men walked back to their car and drove away. Margaret watched from the upstairs window. Who were they? I don't know, Elijah, but I don't think they were FBI. Tuesday, March 12th. Elijah didn't sleep. He spent the night in his office making copies of the documents. He scanned them, uploaded them to an encrypted cloud drive, sent them to 3 different people he trusted. Then he deleted the originals from his computer. At 6 a.m., he received a text message from an unknown number. It read, "You have 48 hours to retract your statements, publicly, or there will be consequences." He showed it to Margaret. She begged him to go to the police, but Elijah shook his head. They won't help, he said. And if I retract, everything I said becomes a lie. Everyone who believed me, they'll think I broke, that I made it all up. Then what do we do, Margaret? Elijah kissed her forehead. We trust God, but his hands were shaking again. That afternoon, Elijah met with an old seminary friend, a journalist named David Chen. They met at a diner outside of town. Elijah handed him a USB drive. This is everything. If something happens to me, I need you to publish it everywhere, all at once. Elijah, are you sure about this? But I'm doing it anyway. Wednesday, March 13th, the morning of the Elijah got up at 5 a.m. He made coffee. He read Psalm 23. He kissed Margaret. He left a note on the kitchen counter. It read, I love you. I'm sorry. I have to finish this. At 6:30 a.m., he got in his truck and drove toward Effingham County. He told no one where he was going. He didn't answer his phone. At 9:15 a.m., his truck was found on Old River Road, engine still running, driver's side door open. Inside, a Bible open to Revelation 6:9. When he opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain because of the word of God and the testimony they had maintained. And that was it. No blood, no signs of struggle, no Elijah Ward. When Margaret Ward woke up that Wednesday morning and found Elijah's note, she called him immediately. No answer. She called again, straight to voicemail. By 8 a.m., she called Robert Hayes. By 8:30, they called the police. The Effingham County Sheriff's Department sent a deputy to take a report. He asked standard questions. When did you last see him? Was he depressed? Any history of mental illness? Margaret answered calmly. But inside she was screaming. My husband didn't run away. Something happened to him. The deputy nodded, wrote some notes, then said, We'll keep an eye out, ma'am. Sure. At 9:15, a passing motorist reported the abandoned truck on Old River Road. Deputies arrived on scene at 9:30. They found the truck running, door open, Bible on the seat. They searched the immediate area, found nothing. No footprints, no tire tracks besides Elijah's, no signs of a struggle. By noon, the sheriff held a brief press. "We're treating this as a missing person case," he said. "We have no evidence of foul play at this time." Reporters asked if the disappearance was connected to the controversial sermon Elijah had given 3 days earlier. The sheriff shook his head. "We're not aware of any connection," but Margaret knew better. She reached out to David Chen, the journalist Elijah had met with the day before. No answer. She tried again. Nothing. So she called David's editor at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. The editor sounded confused. "David took a sudden leave of absence this morning," the editor said. "Family emergency. Didn't say when he'd be back." Margaret's stomach dropped. That afternoon, FBI agents, real ones this time, showed up at her house. They asked about the sermon, about the documents, about who Elijah had been in contact with. Margaret told them everything. She handed over Elijah's laptop, his phone records, everything she... "We'll look into it," the lead agent said, but his tone suggested otherwise. Days turned into weeks. The story made local news, then faded. The church held a prayer vigil. Over 300 people showed up. But the investigation? It went nowhere. Margaret hired a private investigator. He lasted 2 weeks before he called her and said, "Mrs. Ward, I'm sorry, but I can't continue with this case." "Why not?" "I've been advised to step away," he said. "By who?" "I can't say. I'm sorry." And he hung up. Margaret reached out to members of the congregation who had attended that Sunday service. Most were supportive, but a few weren't. She received anonymous letters, emails, messages on social media. Your husband was delusional. He embarrassed the church. Maybe he ran away because he knew he was wrong. Some messages were crueler. He got what he deserved. You should have stopped him. People who talk too much disappear. Margaret reported them to the police. Nothing happened. Meanwhile, the church struggled. Attendance dropped. Families left. The Board of Deacons held an emergency meeting and decided to bring in an interim pastor, someone less controversial. Robert Hayes tried to keep the envelope Elijah had given him safe. But one night, his house was broken into. Nothing was stolen except the envelope. Robert called Margaret in tears. "I'm so sorry. I locked it in a safe. I don't know how they got it." Margaret didn't blame him. She knew they were being watched, silenced, erased. By the end of April, the case was officially classified as inactive. No leads, no evidence, no closure. The official line? Elijah Ward had experienced a mental health crisis and walked away from his truck. He was presumed missing, possibly deceased. But Margaret refused to believe it, because 1 week after Elijah's disappearance, she received a package. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper. It was a printout of an email dated March 10th, the day of the sermon. The subject line read, "Final warning." The body of the email was short. "Elijah, you have crossed a line. Retract immediately or face removal. This is not a threat. It is a certainty." At the bottom of the page, someone had written in pen, "He chose truth." Margaret kept the letter. She didn't show it to anyone because she knew now. Elijah hadn't run away. He hadn't had a breakdown. He'd been taken. And whoever took him wanted everyone to think to think he disappeared on his own, to think it was all in his head. But Margaret knew the truth, and she wasn't going to let them erase him. It's been over a year since Pastor Elijah Ward disappeared. His truck is still in the impound lot. His case file is still marked inactive. And his name? It's slowly fading from memory. But not for everyone. Margaret Ward still lives in Savannah. She still attends First Baptist Church, even though it doesn't feel like home. The new pastor is kind. His sermons are safe, predictable. Everything Elijah wasn't, in the end. Emma and Grace are doing okay. They ask about their father less now, but Margaret knows they think about him every day. She does too. She keeps his Bible on her nightstand, the one they found in the truck. She reads it every night before bed. Sometimes she opens it to Revelation 6:9, the verse it was marked to, and she wonders if Elijah knew, if he understood what was coming. Margaret has stopped trying to get the police to reopen the case. She stopped calling the FBI. She stopped reaching out to journalists, investigators, anyone who might listen, because she's learned something in the past year. Some truths are too dangerous to tell, some people are too powerful to challenge, and some stories, they get buried, not because they're false, but because they're real. But that doesn't mean she's given up. Margaret started a small blog. She doesn't use her real name. She doesn't post photos. But she shares what she knows. She tells Elijah's story. She publishes pieces of the documents he tried to share. She connects with others who've lost people under suspicious circumstances. People who asked the wrong questions, who challenged the wrong people. And slowly, quietly, the truth is spreading. Not in headlines, not on the evening news, but in whispers, in private messages, in encrypted emails. David Chen, the journalist Elijah met with, resurfaced 6 months after his disappearance. He called Margaret once. "I can't talk long," he said, "but I need you to know I still have the USB drive. I've been trying to verify everything. It's real, Margaret." "All of it? Then why haven't you published it?" she asked. There was a long silence. "Because I have a family, and I don't want to end up like Elijah." Margaret understood. She didn't blame him, because she'd made the same choice. To stay silent, at least publicly, for the sake of her daughters. But that email she received, the one with the final warning, she kept it. She scanned it. She uploaded it to 3 different secure servers, and one day, when the time is right, she'll make sure it sees the light. The church held a memorial service for Elijah on the 1-year anniversary of his disappearance. Margaret was asked to speak. She stood at the pulpit where her husband had given his last sermon. She looked out at the congregation. Some faces were familiar, some were new. And she said, "My husband was not a perfect man. He made mistakes. He had doubts. He was scared. But he was brave, and he believed that the truth mattered, even when it cost him everything." She paused, her voice breaking. "I don't know where Elijah is. I don't know if I'll ever see him again, but I know this. He didn't disappear because he was crazy. He didn't run away because he was weak. He disappeared because he told the truth, and someone decided that truth was too dangerous to let live." The room was silent. "So I want you to remember him, not as a conspiracy theorist, not as someone who lost his mind, but as a man who loved you, who served you, and who was willing to sacrifice everything to protect you." Margaret stepped down from. She walked past the pews, past the stained glass windows, and out into the Georgia. And for the first time in a year, she felt something in a long time. Hope. Not because she thought Elijah would come back, but because she knew his story wouldn't die. 3 days after preaching about the most dangerous truth in America, Pastor Elijah Ward disappeared. His sermon was erased. His voice was silenced. His story was buried. People who knew him, they remember. And that's how the truth survives, not in headlines, not in official reports, but in the hearts of those who refuse to forget. Elijah Ward's story doesn't have a neat ending, but maybe that's the point. Some truths don't come with closure, they come with questions. And those questions, they matter. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it made you angry, then share it, talk about it, ask questions. Because the truth only survives when we refuse to let it die. Hit that like button. Follow this channel for more real stories that need to be told. And share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because we're not here to bury the truth. We're here to keep it alive.